No one is going to understand your business better than the procurement people and their needs. When someone comes in and they're assumptive, you should be very skeptical about that. What I would ask procurement people not to do is to get to the point too fast. So if a salesperson is showing up legitimately wanting to learn, understand, and I think more than anything, what salespeople don't understand about the difficulties of procurement are the intersecting and often contrary objectives that people in an organization have. Give people the space to learn about that and learn about your world if they build the trust. Because then we have long-term relationships with people and we legitimately get to be more effective at what we do, not just focusing on efficiency, cost, or how do we get this over with quickly.
Thank you so much for joining another edition of The Never Ending Climb for Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. Today, we have the pleasure of being joined by Chris Shadow. And Chris is one of the most passionate people about helping enterprise organizations sell more. And yes, people in procurement supply chain need to understand, call it the other side of that profession. So Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Sean, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here today.
Amazing. I know there's a lot of procurement folks that have some ideas about those salespeople. It's super important though. There's good and there's not so good. We're going to get into that. But let's start with empathy, because empathy is something I'm passionate about, but I know we both agree it's got to be the right kind of empathy. Let's get into that. Tell us more about it.
You know, it's a really big discussion, especially now. And there's a lot of people that are very, very well intentioned, but we all know about good intentions. Sales is all about how you feel. So empathy and sales need to work together hand in glove. I'm going to say something that's probably really surprising. I'm not a really big fan of talking about empathy because we don't do it very well often. We need to focus on compassion and how we express compassion to people. So, that probably opened up a big can of worms, but yeah, we do a lot of work with people talking about how we make sure that they connect with people to care about them and not make it about themselves.
It really is about showing up to help and deeply understanding what matters. And I think this is where there's the affective empathy, where it's the how somebody else feels and their emotions. But then there's the cognitive empathy, which I summarize as helping stay calm and objective and bringing wisdom to make things better, but understanding what needs to be made better in the first place. And I think that cognitive empathy, and it comes with a sense of compassion inherent in it to make sure that you're helping in a meaningful way. It's like that video of the woman with the nail in her head. It's not about the nail. She didn't need the nail removed right then. What she needed right then is for somebody to listen so that she can get to a place where she's open to talking about taking the nail out of her forehead. And it's such a powerful example, and where I think sometimes there's folks that jump too quickly to, hey, I know how to solve this for you. It's almost like a doctor prescribing a treatment before they've actually done the proper diagnosis, which to me is malpractice.
That's so well said. And we have a term in the consultancy called jump. Everybody knows about jump. And it's the tendency that we have to jump to being able to help someone right away. Like, oh my God, here's your problem. I see it. Let me help you. No, that's not, people aren't built like that. I am not so worried about the solution. I know we're going to get there. What I'm more worried about is, are we asking the right questions to solve the problem that we need to solve? And, one of the things that we coach all the time at the consultancy is the difference between I and you. And this is from Chris Voss, the negotiation guru. One of the simplest and coolest ways to demonstrate your listening and create that bridge to cognitive empathy is just to label what you see. You seem frustrated right now. It seems like you're really struggling. And don't say anything. Just wait. Give a person that space to confirm or deny and let them feel as though their emotion and where they're at has been seen. It's very powerful, and restraint is what's critical when we're in those soft conversations.
Yeah, there's something about making, coming straight back to it's not what you said, it's how you made them feel. And when you help them feel seen and heard, you are remembered in the way that I think we'd all like to be. But it takes work. It takes really understanding the where they are, and it means that we really need to understand. And I think you said this well, that most people know what they want, but not what they really need, or they are maybe too busy talking about what they want without articulating or addressing the elephant in the room of what the real need is.
And that's the bridge that separates good salespeople from bad salespeople. I coach people on sales in exactly that way. People have a feeling about where they want to go. And what salespeople's jobs is to get people there in reality. How do we align how someone feels in terms of their wants with the reality of their market and their needs? So great salespeople need to navigate two places: the intrinsic problem, which is the people problem, but also be able to really help someone with the extrinsic problem, the problem in the market or the organization that they're solving.
Yeah, and there's all of the feelings, and in large enterprise, there's often other dynamics that are not seen outside the organization, and sometimes not even articulated out loud inside the organization, that fall into that intrinsic problem bucket of, the reason that we don't change that issue that we all have is because Ted's over there, and Ted's going to retire in 2 years, and Ted's not going to touch it. And we'll get to that after Ted retires, because you can pry that tool or that process or whatever it is out of Ted's cold dead hands, but it's not changing. And that's one of those enterprise realities. I'm always fascinated by the sense of a combination of ingredients that frame up an effective conversation. And I've always believed, and I will always believe, that effective sales isn't selling, it's reaching out, certainly at the large enterprise level, and doing that, uh, doing the job that needs to be done, building a connection, reaching out, creating a connection, and then actually understanding what's going on. And there's ingredients of that cognitive empathy and understanding the extrinsic problem and the intrinsic problems, and really understanding what that is. But then that's to the jump analogy. It's that stage early on where I feel like it's so important that it's not about selling, and the job is sales, but it's not about selling. It's about, hey, can we help you in a way that's meaningful, in a way that's going to be valuable in the context of how everybody's feeling and what's going on and the reality, extrinsic and intrinsic problems that are going on. And then if we can help you, we keep talking. If not, we'll try to make a recommendation of something that can. And it feels like there's something so honorable about that approach. And the contrast, which we'll get into, the polar opposite of that is that line from a movie from a few years ago, "Do you want me to shove some product down their throat?" Which is, of course, the part that you and I, want to throw up just a little bit every time somebody goes there. I'd love to explore some of the principles that you've talked about that resonate for me. And it's this idea of, you described connecting and clarity and objectivity and alignment. Can you unpack that? Because inside that, I think there's a really great frame of what good looks like. And if you're in procurement, you should expect this as a baseline of what good looks like.
Yeah, so thanks for Sean. It's such a great question. And I want to restate, because what we don't want is people focused on products and telling you about their product, magically hoping that you're going to get some epiphany and go, oh my God, I've been waiting for that. That's not how people work. And one of the lines that I think everybody should understand about sales is, nobody buys a product. They buy the way it feels to solve a problem. And Ironically, we've been talking a lot about feelings here and being able to connect to people's feelings. The reason we need to connect to people's feelings is so we can get them on a path where we know what their where is, what their objective is, we're clear about the barriers, and then we have alignment, and then we collaborate on that path. So a great salesperson will not show up and tell you about the feature of their product. Now, so what do you think? That you know right away. And I feel bad for those salespeople because someone has steered them in the wrong direction. A great salesperson is going to do, when they meet you, three things. They're going to learn about who you are as a person, they're going to learn about your job, and then they're going to work with you on trying to find out what is your mission. And what I ask everybody, if a salesperson shows up and starts doing that, give them some space because they're doing the right thing.
There's something I come back to that sense of doing the right things the right way and showing up with the spirit of, look, here to help, understand where you're going, and if what we have isn't going to help you, we're going to let you know. I think that there's something really powerful in that as a baseline expectation that procurement leaders and other leaders in business should expect from somebody that may have something that can help them. And that difference in frame in here's what good looks like is it's showing up with the curiosity and that sense of service. And then the opposite of that is that this a line from a movie about these interns at Google. You want me to shove some product down their throat? And that's the antithesis of what good looks like. And so I'd love to just hit a couple, call it lowlights, of what are the red alarm bells that you should flag and just start shutting down a conversation if you see these poor behaviors, Chris, because I think there's some things that, like, if people don't know what good looks like, they might naively assume that all salespeople are the same. And I'd love to just hit some of those highlights of, like, here's what good looks like, which we did, but here's some of the things that, oh my God, watch out for these. If you see this, run.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are going to be upset with me for this, but if a salesperson shows up and the first time you meet them, they know how to solve your problem, they don't. How
They
could
just
they?
met you.
They just, there's an assumptiveness there it's just arrogance. And it's hope. It's hope as a strategy. That's never a good strategy. The other thing is there are only three things that people buy: confidence, safety, and certainty. Getting alignment on the how confident do you feel right now? How safe are you in this situation right now? And how certain are you that this is whether you're going to change behavior or not? Look for that as well, because you want people that want to align on one of those three things first before they start telling you, and I have the best this, and this is what's that, and here's our evidence there. So make sure that look, if you don't trust the person in front of you that they have the right intentions, you should probably listen to that.
Yeah, I go through life, Chris, with a pretty simple rule. And as I meet people, there's that initial gut feel, right? I don't know if science has ever entirely fully described or articulated or discovered how all that works, but there's that kind of categorization in the first few seconds. Do you trust the person? Are they competent or not? And then I joke, there's a few people that you meet them and you're like, after you're done shaking their hand, you're like, shoot, where's my wallet? Let me just make sure that's still there. And you never forget that feeling, right? There's just a real simple gut feel. And I know one of the things in our sales process that I would invite anyone out there to have is, if anybody in our team gets the vibe that one of the key decision makers, key influencers at that organization is just not a good person, we just shut it right down. And there's nothing I love better than to give that organization to our competition, because there is no faster way to really muck things up than end up in a situation where, you just didn't have the right ingredients for success to begin with. And it's tricky because sometimes in enterprise, you only get to meet a few people so briefly. So it's a tricky ingredient to look for. But that first impression it's so powerful, that first gut reaction, right?
Well, there's a ton of science around that. And it's fascinating because one of my favorite analogies, and we start almost every sales training with this, is there's a behavioral psychologist named Jonathan Haidt. He came up with this analogy of the elephant rider and path that very well describes that first piece, that feeling, that vibe and flow that you get with someone, the power of your subconscious to do the right thing or the wrong thing. And it doesn't matter if it's correct or not. It's the salesperson's responsibility to make sure, as you said, when they show up, that they show up in such a way that is reassuring, open, and make sure to calm that elephant down so we can actually get to the point where we're talking about objectivity, clarity, and alignment. So those feels come from really, really deep places inside of us. And I tell people, listen to them.
Yeah, it's so powerful. The way that we have indexed further and further towards technology sometimes makes it harder to stay in touch with that. And it's almost it can be
Mm.
created as something that's overly academic or it's easy for some to dismiss, but it's certainly not something that I will ever dismiss. I can't think of a time that it's genuinely steered me wrong. And Chris, you're smiling, so I think you're in that same boat. Um,
You bring up a really great point around technology because look, AI, everybody's talking about AI, the importance of AI, all of that. But I keep saying to people, look, you know that feeling you get when you call a 1-800 number and like a human being answers? And I'm going to ask you, Sean, when you call a 1-800 number and you're expecting a bot and someone goes, hey, how are you doing? How do you feel?
It's a massively different feel, right? Yeah, you're either like, sorry, say that again, and you're into that little clip where you got those two Scottish guys in a voice activated elevator that are stuck. Or, you're in this place where you are talking to a real life human that is placed enough value on your call that they had a real life human answer it. And that's rare and precious these days, isn't it?
And that rare and precious will become more and more scarce
Yeah,
as we index, maybe rightly or wrongly, on some of these technological marvels. How we navigate that space right now is going to be fascinating. And the more human we can be about the integration of those extraordinary technologies is, I think, a place that we're going to be, struggling and learning about for a long time.
agreed. Chris, I know there's so much of that interface of sales and procurement that I hope folks have taken from this conversation. If you can briefly recap for me what you think procurement pros everywhere need to understand about sales so that they have a picture of what good looks like and they have that filter of, whoa, if it's going sideways, just park it and shut that down real quick. How would you summarize that?
It's a great question. How do I summarize what procurement people should be looking for? So, no one is going to understand your business better than the procurement people and their needs. When someone comes in and they're assumptive, you should be very skeptical about that. What I would ask procurement people not to do is to get to the point too fast. So if a salesperson is showing up legitimately wanting to learn, understand, and I think more than anything, what salespeople don't understand about the difficulties of procurement are the intersecting and often contrary objectives that people in an organization has. Give people the space to learn about that and learn about your world if they build the trust. Because then we have long term relationships with people and we legitimately get to be more effective at what we do, not just focusing on efficiency, cost, or how do we get this over with quickly. So does that answer the question?
I think it's a great frame because when there's a whole set of salespeople showing up and throwing up all over procurement with here's why we're the best, here's why you need to pick us, and here's our special snowflake theory on the universe, life, and everything. And then they come back with buy now, and here's your call to action. And that whole frame in the enterprise space, I find in what you just said thrown right out, right? And it is one of the first red flags to look for and to gravitate back to those people that are there to help, because there's a whole set of intentions there that are really powerful. And back to gut feel, when somebody's there to genuinely help you, it's hard to go wrong with that, right? Because it's starting from the right place. And I think that's really, really powerful. Chris, I am grateful for you, for your time, your wisdom today. Thank you so much for joining us to share your wisdom with the world.
Sean, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. And for everybody watching, this has been another edition of The Never Ending Climb for Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. Thank you very much.